Today I know that the church has us honoring Saint Isaac Jogues and Saint John Brebeuf. But there is another martyr that I'd like to highlight today. He's not as well known and kind of one of my personal heroes. Some of you may know of him. He is not canonized as a saint yet, but he is a blessed, so he has been beatified. And his name is Blessed Jerzy Popiełuszko. And I'm probably mangling his name. But he is a martyr of Poland, and he is a martyr of the Cold War. And when the Soviet Union and their tentacles had grown quite massively with their communistic regime across much of Eastern Europe, Poland, which had a rich and amazing, beautiful Catholic history, had been taken over by this atheistic regime of the Soviet Union. And I think the story of the Polish people, the Catholic people of Poland, is just amazing. But for me, this ties all the way back to 1917, when the epic story of Fatima begins, with 3 little children in a little town in the middle of nowhere, and our Blessed Mother appearing to them. And later, one of the visionaries, as you know, at the time, Lucia, who later entered the convent, had a vision and in which Mary called for the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, that the errors of Russia may not continue to spread, and the error of Russia being this communistic regime, which spread massively. But through amazing, consistent prayer and simple prayer of the Catholic people, brave, courageous, simple folks of Poland who continue to gather under harsh conditions, but gather by the hundreds and thousands, they kept their faith through the many years of darkness. And among them was this priest, Father Jerzy, and he was just a simple, humble guy, and he simply was just continuing to do Mass day after day. And every month they had something they called, I think, Mass of the Fatherland, where they would have thousands upon thousands of people would gather in this small little church to remember their Polish history, and as an act of defiance against the Soviet regime. And so Father Jerzy's persecution began, and the Soviet government made death threats against him and captured him, interrogated him many times, imprisoned him, beat him, but he continued. And it was just a simple message of freedom, and just a simple message for people to gather to pray, and they would. And it's a long story, but eventually they had enough of him, so they captured him and beat him pretty brutally, tied 25 pounds of rock to his ankles and threw him into a river, and he died. And over 100,000 people attended his funeral, and now he is blessed. Anyway, I just thought I would remember this because, as it leads to the collapse of the Soviet Union, the Berlin Wall coming down, this was huge, and I think it was incredibly underestimated, but it was one of those wars that came down that was fought without much weaponry, in terms of firing of weapons like World War II, but it was really through the courageous leadership of Father Jerzy and many people in Poland that kept the faith, and they began that spark in which it started a domino effect to collapse the Soviet Union. And this all began, I think, with our Blessed Mother Mary asking for prayer, for penance, and prayer of reparation. And so whenever we look at the martyrs, we just remember what it takes, and sometimes how the battle, it'll just never, ever end. We're always going to be in the battle. And here in the United States, I really believe that the weaponry that's used by the dark side is way, way more sinister and deceptive and seemingly innocuous than what was used in the other wars before. It's the methodology of deception, and I really believe that if we're not paying attention, it just sort of seeps into our culture, into our lives, and so we need protesters. We need people willing to be brave, to stand up and to fight against the illogical ways, especially of the decisions that are being made by California here, that we stand up for truth and that we do so with peaceful prayer, but always a prayer of protest as well, and that we embrace the way of Christ, who was the ultimate prophet, and he here shows us every day the price that had to be paid. And so the martyrs are always reminding us that that's what it's going to take. And every generation has its new battles to fight, and this is our generation. Especially in this month of October, remember that we are a country and we live in a world in which the lives of unborn are easily discarded. Are we willing to stand there and take the heat? You know, I got a complaint letter for having the 40 Days for Life stand out there. I said, bring it on. It's all right. Bring it on. And, you know, we'll take the persecution. That's what it takes. And that's just a little one. I mean, but compared to what Father Jerzy had to go through, what Isaac Jogues and John Brebrave had to go through, it's nothing. And so just a little persecution, some people crumble. But for us, I think if we can be brave and look at our ancestors, look at our predecessors and have done who and what they have done, and especially to look at Jesus, I hope we'll have just a semblance of courage, the courage that they had, and be able to stand up for the truth that only comes from the divine law of our God.